people are really smart. Large groups are really, really smart. And when you connect large groups together with AI that enables them to really share and debate and deliberate their knowledge and wisdom and insight, it will surface solutions and all the reasons why that are really powerful and really effective.
Hello and welcome to the Imagine AI Live podcast. I'm your host, Chris Madden, and today we have with us Louis Rosenberg. I'm so excited for this call. How are you doing, Louis?
Oh, great. Thanks for having me.
Dr. Louis Rosenberg is a distinguished American engineer, researcher, inventor, and entrepreneur with a prolific career in augmented reality, virtual reality, and artificial intelligence. He has a PhD from Stanford University, built the first augmented reality system for the U.S. Air Force, has over 300 patents, and obsesses over this technology called artificial swarm intelligence. Did I miss anything, Louis?
No, that's a good summary.
Let's start with, what are you working on now?
So my career has really been focused on human-computer interaction and using technology to amplify human abilities. And so that goes back 35 years from my early work in augmented reality and virtual reality to my work in artificial intelligence. And it was really about a little over 10 years ago that I became very interested in the use of artificial intelligence, not to replace people, but to connect people together and make them smarter, with the ultimate goal of achieving what I call collective superintelligence as an alternative to purely AI-driven superintelligence. So a collective superintelligence is a system where we keep humans in the loop. We leverage their knowledge, wisdom, insight, intuition, values, sensibilities, and yet we can still create a system that can solve problems smarter than any individual person could, and do it very quickly. And so and I personally, that's a safer approach to superintelligence than replacing people for a variety of reasons that we could talk about. To kind of transition to the comment you made, which is that, my interest is artificial swarm intelligence. The reason for that is that when I started working towards this goal of collective superintelligence, I did what a lot of researchers do, which is I looked to nature. How has nature addressed this problem in the past? And it turns out that evolution has many times enabled large groups to solve problems significantly smarter than any individual member. And biologists call this swarm intelligence because it was discovered first in bee swarms, who can do remarkable things, but it also applies to fish schools, ant colonies, bird flocks. Swarm intelligence is basically nature's method of enabling a group to solve problems significantly greater intelligence than is contained inside their individual brains. And so the question that really has driven me for the last decade is, okay, if it works for birds and bees and fish, it should work for people if we can use AI to connect human groups together in similarly efficient and effective ways.
I watched a TED Talk you gave, and it was this crazy thing where you did this, artificial swarm intelligence with people, like guessing who was going to win a horse race.
What you're referring to is our first generation of technology, which people still use today and still effective for many things, where we said, okay, how do bee swarms and fish schools solve problems? Let's enable human groups to do that. And we did it graphically. And so it looks very much like a swarm. So we have a software platform called Swarm, where each person can control a little magnet in real time, and a question appears on everybody's screen, and they control the magnets, and they can guide a glass puck to an answer. And there's AI that's watching everybody's magnet to infer their varying levels of confidence and conviction based on their behaviors. So it's really, the thing about a swarm is it's not a vote, it's not a poll, it's not a survey. It is a real-time interactive system. And because it is a real-time interactive system, everybody's behaving with everybody else. They're pushing and pulling on everybody else. They're revealing the strength of their conviction to the underlying AI. They're also discovering the sense of their strength of their conviction as they're deliberating. But Swarm was a purely graphical deliberation. And in a minute, I'll talk about where we are now, which is conversational and really very similar in many ways. But to kind of just comment on your the story you told was throughout the last 10 years, because we claim we can amplify the intelligence of human groups. People want proof, and we do academic studies with lots of universities, but very often reporters will just challenge us and say, yeah, like if this really works, here's it. And so a reporter from CBS Interactive said, okay, why don't you predict the Kentucky Derby, which is, the biggest horse race in the US each year. And they said, well, don't just predict the winner, predict the first 4 horses in order. That's called the superfecta. And it's actually one of the hardest bets in all of sports, is to predict the first 4 horses in order. And so the way our AI system works, we don't have any data about horse racing. We didn't study the horse racing race. What we did was said, okay, let's bring together this case was a relatively small group, 25 people, let's bring together 25 horse racing enthusiasts, not even experts, enthusiasts. They came into our platform, question would appear on their screen, which horse is going to come in fourth. And then they would deliberate, AI watch them, guide their puck. And then we'd have that horse. And then we'd say, okay, now which horse is going to come in third? And then they would do that, which would come in second, which would come in first. And so we had this set of horses, and we gave it to the reporter. And then the reporter published a story, which puts pressure on us because we just made a prediction. And then she went to the Kentucky Derby and placed a bet and tweeted out her ticket. And I placed a bet as well on those 4 horses. And so I placed a $20 bet and won $11,000. And so it was a great story for us. And a bunch of her readers won money. But the interesting thing is that had those 25 people just taken a vote on it, they wouldn't have gotten any of the horses right. And they certainly would have gotten all 4 right. And so the idea here is that when groups can deliberate as a system and push and pull off each other and just reveal the strength of their conviction, they're significantly smarter. And that's how fish schools work, and that's how bee swarms work, and that's how nature works. And so over the last 10 years, our goal has been to make the technology more and more useful to the world. And so the graphical method is really good for like multiple choice questions, like who's going to win a horse race or numerical estimations. But our goal really has always been to allow groups to just solve any open-ended problem. And to do that, we really needed to do it conversationally, because a true human deliberation that takes advantage of our knowledge and wisdom and insight is a conversation. And the way collective intelligence works is conversation intelligence scales with the size of the group. So if I can have, 20 people hold a conversation, they'll be smarter than a small group. If I could have 20,000 people have a conversation, they will be, super intelligent. And so that has been our goal really for a long time, but it's a really hard goal. And the reason it's a hard goal is that we humans are really good at having conversations in small groups. It turns out that the optimal size for a thoughtful deliberation is 4 to 7 people. And then as you start to scale up a conversation, a real-time conversation, a deliberation, each person gets less and less airtime, and they have to wait longer and longer to respond to others. So by about 15 people, it's not really a conversational deliberation anymore. It's like a series of monologues. And above 20 people, it's really just a presentation, like one person to many. And so the big challenge for us is, well, how can you enable 100 people or 500 people or 1 million people to actually hold a real-time conversation that converges on a solution together in unison, the way a fish school makes decisions together. And the way we did it was to study fish schools. And so the fish schools are pretty amazing because nobody's in charge in a fish school. All of the fish have very limited view of the world, right? Like the fish on one side of the school can see things on one side, fish on the other side of the school can see things on the other side. Fish in the middle might not actually see things, so in terms of like evading predators or finding food, it's remarkable that they could basically navigate the ocean as a superorganism, making all of life's decisions, solving problems, multiple predators coming at them from different directions, and they will solve these problems super fast. So fast that biologists call them a superorganism. And so they do it by having these little conversations, essentially. They have a special organ on the side of their body called a lateral line, and it just detects pressure and vibration changes in the water around them. And so they can keep track of the direction and speed of their neighboring fish. And so a little group of neighbors is like a little tug of war. Like they all have their intention and they can keep track of the intentions of others. And so if this little group of neighbors sees a predator, they'll make a decision to move in a certain direction. But how do they make a decision when fish on one side of the school could see a predator and fish on the other side of the school could see a different predator, and yet they'll make the right decision? It's because all these little neighboring groups overlap. And so the information can propagate quickly through the whole school. And so what they're really having is an infinite number of overlapping conversations where the information propagates and they become a superintelligence. And so we said, okay, let's do this with human groups. Let's take a big group of 500 people and let's break them into 100 groups of 5. 5 people can have a really thoughtful deliberation, but let's make all these groups overlap. And so all these conversations overlap and the information propagates. Problem is people can't do that. A person cannot be in more than one conversation at a time. There's actually a name for it. It's called the cocktail party problem. Because at a cocktail party, you could be in a little conversation and you could hear something interesting in another conversation near you. And if you start focusing on that other conversation, you lose track of the conversation you're in. Like we just cannot do that. And so the way we solved this was to create an artificial agent we call a conversational surrogate. And so we take 500 people, break them up into 100 groups of 5, put a conversational surrogate into every one of these groups, whose job is to listen to the conversation that they're in, follow the debate, follow the strength of people's conviction and confidence, extract insights, and then pass those insights on to the agents in other groups. And then the agents in those other groups will just express them conversationally. So I have 500 people. They're all broken up into little conversations with 4 other humans and an AI. And that other AI is expressing insights. It's not making things up. It's not grabbing things off the internet. It's just passing intelligence from other groups, weaving all the conversations together into a single conversation. And it works. We call this conversational swarm intelligence, and it enables groups potentially of any size. Right now, we do mostly 0 to 400 people, but in theory, we could do 4,000 people, 4 million people in a single conversation where groups are deliberating, brainstorming with each other, building on the ideas of others, arguing with each other, and converging really quickly on solutions. And it makes these groups significantly smarter. And it also allows conversation at scales that just have never been possible before.
That is incredible. So, and what do you call the conversational AI that's in each of the small groups?
So we call it a conversational surrogate agent.
Conversational surrogate.
It's an AI agent. It is participating. We work hard to make it just participate like any other member. But again, it's not making things up. It is passing insights from other groups. And it's not pretending to be human, meaning it acts very natural. I'll give you another sports example, not because we're a sports company, but because sports forecasting is really convenient because events happen all the time and we can get large groups of people to talk about it. And so
interesting. Yeah.
The Super Bowl was a couple of weeks ago, and we were asked by a reporter to predict who's going to win the Super Bowl. And it was Kansas City Chiefs versus the Philadelphia Eagles. And so we brought together, 110 people. They came together in our software called ThinkScape. And we said, okay, who's going to win the Super Bowl and why? Now, what's really interesting, like when we do this conversationally instead of graphically, the big advantage is we don't just get an optimized answer. We get all the reasons why. We get the underlying thinking and rationale because the group is deliberating logically and rationally and arguing various points. And so when we brought this group together, it was 100 people broken into 20 groups of 5 and AI agent. And so some groups start their conversation and they're convinced that Kansas City was going to win because almost all of the media and the Vegas betting market said Kansas City was going to win. A smaller set of groups were arguing more in favor of Philadelphia Eagles. Had you just taken a vote, they would have said Kansas City. And in fact, some reporters have written articles about our prediction, and they asked OpenAI, ChatGPT, they asked Perplexity, they asked Google Gemini, who's going to win, and they all said Kansas City because it was the conventional wisdom, even among experts. Like the New York Times said, like 60 to 70% of their experts said Kansas City. So we had this group deliberate, and again, because it's deliberative, they were expressing arguments. And so these interesting arguments would come up and said, City has the better quarterback and the better record, but they rely so much on this one player, their remarkable quarterback, Mahomes, that they thought the Eagles actually statistically had a better chance, because if one player has a bad day, Kansas City fails, whereas the Eagles have so many good players that they have a lot of different combinations that work, which is an interesting argument, not one that we had seen. And so this group, by deliberating this way, the collective intelligence, this was like a 10-minute deliberation. They're in real time. They're arguing, debating in real time. And we can watch how it starts out with this conventional wisdom of Kansas City, and it emerges and shifts to, no, the group converged on the Philadelphia Eagles as the prediction and gave a set of reasons why. And then, and so we gave that to the reporter. And then again, we're nervous. We're saying, okay, everybody's saying Kansas City and we're saying the Eagles. And then your Sunday happens and the Eagles didn't just win. They blew away Kansas City, in a shocking display. And so we were relieved, but also it's another great example of how, first of all,
AI agent, it can talk to you and help you, ask you questions, help you, the group, come to a conclusion. But then all of these different conversational surrogates, like the 100 of them, they're synthesizing this information in real time amongst themselves. And
right.
And so it's being updated in real time. And every group has this surrogate that has that updated information of what all the groups are thinking. And then from the admin perspective, from you can see the collective thought and all the reasons why and the decisions being made.
Yes. So you used a single word a bunch of times, which is the right word, which is real time. Except the real time nature of it is what makes it really hard, because all of these AI agents, they are watching the deliberation in their local room in real time. They're watching what are the ideas that are coming up, what are the reasons that support those ideas that come up, what's the strength of the sentiment that each person has for these different ideas, and then it's building a database in real time of here's what's happening, and that's happening in every one of these rooms at the same time. And so you have some of the rooms are bringing up similar ideas, and some of the rooms are bringing up different ideas, and some of the rooms have sentiment going in one direction, some of the rooms have sentiment in another direction, and so it's all being watched, and in real time, the AI in each of the rooms will interject with its contribution to the conversation, right? So that if this conversation, groups are each of the people is saying things, the AI will say something, but again, it's based on something. So let's say that let's take a sports example, and so we're arguing about who's going to win the Super Bowl, and in my little group, we're talking about Kansas City's going to win, and some other group, they're talking about the weather, how the weather is going to impact which team has an advantage. And maybe they say, in this other group, they say, the weather forecast is really cold. It's going to favor Philadelphia. And so that's an insight from another group. A global system is watching all of the whole network and saying, oh, here's an idea that came up in this group, hasn't been raised in my group. It gets passed to the AI agent in my group, and the AI agent in my group says, well, maybe we should consider the weather because it's going to be really cold, and that will favor Philadelphia. And so that will come into our conversation. Now, maybe that sways our conversation. Maybe our sentiment in my group starts to shift towards Philadelphia. If so, that insight is going to become more likely to spread to other. If, on the other hand, somebody in my group says Kansas City is also really good in the cold, that doesn't make any sense. Well, now that idea won't spread. And so what you have here is a network where ideas are spreading to challenge each group, right? Like the most important thing about a deliberation is people challenging each other. And that's often counterintuitive, but I put it this way, which is, if I just said to this group, who's going to win the Super Bowl? And everybody just said Kansas City, like the conversation's over, right? It's like, what are you going to, like, if everybody agrees? And so the behavior, what's interesting is how people behave when challenged. Do they continue to stand up and argue for their perspective? Does their perspective change? Do they concede? And so the AI agents, or the kind of the intelligence that's watching over the whole system, is passing insights to challenge groups. And then it's watching how people behave in response to those challenges. And then insights that actually have sway are more likely to spread. Insights that don't could die down. But of course, they could come up multiple times. So what's interesting is that you have this parallel system where similar ideas are coming up many times across 100 different rooms, or potentially 1,000 different rooms. And the strength of their persuasiveness is what makes them spread, not the forcefulness of how it's said. And I say that because one of the big problems in group deliberations in general, in a business meeting, is that like a strong personality can just get their way because they're a loudmouth. And it's not because of the best idea, it's just they're loud, or they're the boss. In a conversational swarm like this, yeah, there could be a loudmouth who's very convincing in a little group, but for their idea to spread through the network, it has to stand on its own merits. And so you end up with really this system where the best ideas surface to the top, even if they weren't the conventional wisdom of the group. And we did a study last year with Carnegie Mellon University to really look at this in an interesting way, where we gave groups IQ tests as a conversational swarm. And so these were groups of just 35 people. We gave them IQ tests 3 different ways. First, we looked at what's their IQ as individuals on this test. It's just a standardized test. And that's one. And then we said, well, what happens if we use a typical wisdom of crowd method, where you take the most popular answer? You say, oh, well, let's just take the most popular answer. We'll have groups of 35 people take an IQ test. We'll take the most popular answer, and we'll see if that amplifies intelligence. And then we had them come together as a conversational swarm and take the IQ test that way and see how they did. And in all cases, people had the exact same amount of time to answer each question. So time was the same. What we found was that on the average, when people took the test as individuals, they had a spectrum of IQs, but the hump of the bell curve was at an IQ of 100, because that's actually how IQ tests are designed. They're designed so that most people score around 100. So we knew that these groups, most people scored around 100. And then when we took the most popular answer, the IQ jumped to 114, which is interesting. The wisdom of crowd works. It can amplify intelligence. When we had the group deliberate as a conversational swarm in real time, their IQ was 128, which was, so all these groups got to the 128 IQ level, or average 128. It's the 97th percentile. So they outperformed 97% of the individuals in a world population. And it turns out in every case, the group performed at an IQ level that actually outperformed every member of the group. And so that's interesting. But what's more interesting is this idea of, why does this method outperform so significantly taking a vote? Well, taking a vote is what's the most popular answer. Well, by definition, as IQ questions get harder and harder, less and less people in the group can solve it. And the conventional wisdom is usually just wrong, right? So for a group to solve a question of an IQ question that's aimed at 97th percentile, we could have a situation where in this conversational network, almost everybody thinks the answer is wrong. And yet the few people who have a good rationale are able to sway the whole group, because their rationale is spreading from group to group. It makes sense. And it allows this group to overcome what's usually the biggest problem of a collective intelligence system, which is collective intelligence systems are great, except when conventional wisdom is wrong. And then then they amplify errors. A conversational swarm, because it's deliberative, because it's conversational, because it's a debate, actually allows a group to converge on answers that weren't obvious at the start, but the group discovered that they were obvious, discovered that they were correct.
So, and in that example, the conversational groups were 5 people again?
Yeah, so 5 people, so 7 groups of 5, and an AI agent in each group. And again, the AI agent is not bringing in any of its own opinions about IQ. It's just passing insights from other groups.
So we've got this amazing way to make predictions, and I can see your company making a lot of money just making sports bets. So I wonder, what are the problems that you see this thing that you've created solving in the world?
So Yeah, so I mean, our interest is not sports forecasting, and again, we do it because it's a great way to just challenge our technology. But
It's a clear example too. People
yeah,
can visualize
yeah,
that.
it's an easy example. But we, our the way we look at the kind of the broader problem is that there are really large teams in most businesses, in government, in large civil groups, organizations, and they have no way to actually deliberate conversationally, to brainstorm together, to solve problems together in real time. They can do things asynchronously, which usually is not that effective for a variety. Asynchronous has a variety of problems, or they can have small meetings of, again, effective meeting, 4 to 7 people. The average Fortune 1000 company has 30,000 employees, and their average product team has hundreds of members. And so if you have this world where companies have these large teams and they can have an effective, actual conversational deliberation of 4 to 7 people, that's a problem. And so we solve that. And so we we have large organizations, large companies that are using our technology in this way. The Department of Energy is a good example. So, Department of Energy, they have this project where they have large groups of experts. I think like almost 100 experts on geothermal energy, and they couldn't get these large groups of experts to make any real progress together on making decisions or prioritizing things. And what the Department of Energy wanted was really to prioritize how they should invest funding in the field of geothermal energy. And so they said, and they came across our technology and they said, oh, let's see if we can bring these groups together in our ThinkScape platform and have them debate and deliberate. And what they found was that they could very quickly enable these large groups, a lot of strong personalities. They're all experts, have maybe even maybe politics involved in like what they think different things should be funded. And yet they come together in this conversational swarm, and very efficiently they can deliberate the issue. They can prioritize what are the best approaches. You get this clear record of what are all the reasons that support each approach, what are all the reasons expressed that oppose each approach. And so like at the end, you can actually see this complete data structure of here's how this deliberation went and why the group converged on these three approaches being the most useful to fund. So that's one example. We have a project with the World Bank where they wanted to bring together groups of climate experts to do prioritization of climate issues. We have a project with the U.S. Air Force about bringing groups together, but we also have projects with large businesses where they want to deliberate to make investment priorities. Your job is if your company has 50 analysts who are studying a particular financial issue, very hard to how do you find their collective wisdom? How do you amplify their collective intelligence? We can do that. We also see interest on the kind of market research side, where large corporations they want to bring together groups of their customers, right? They would say, we're going to launch this new product, and we want them to look at what we're thinking of naming this product. Let's bring together 100 of our customers, show them the product, show them the name, and ask them, is this going to be an effective name for the product? And why? Within an hour, they'll have the way they do this today is with focus groups, right? And a focus group has about 8 people, and a single loudmouth in any one of those 8-person focus groups just sways it. So it doesn't give you statistically significant results. People don't really even trust the outcome of focus groups. It's more anecdotal. We could say, oh, well, you could do a focus group of 200 people, and in an hour, you can have, 20 times more qualitative insights, and it will be at statistical scale. So there's real value of being able to have conversational deliberations at scale for understanding consumers, understanding voters, for doing things like deliberative democracy, or because you have a large team of experts or a large team of stakeholders, and you have no way to just brainstorm, prioritize, deliberate, argue in a way that's effective. Yeah, so it's essentially a new form of communication that addresses a scale problem that most people they just take for granted. That, like, I mean, you could try to bring 50 people into a Zoom call, but that is not a conversation.
Wow, it's incredible, Louis. I've got goosebumps here because I don't know why I'd never even like fathomed that possibility that could be done, and it makes so much sense now that you realize the capabilities of AI and the way that you've explained it and you set it up. And I'm curious about. I mean, you've been working on this for a long time, so you've built. I imagine it's proprietary system you have, and I mean, are there competitors to what you're doing?
So there isn't. I mean, we've been working on this for a long time, and it was a lot of learnings from first doing it graphically. I mean, first studying biological systems and fish schools and bee swarms, and then doing it graphically, which again, graphically works. And we learned a lot of the principles of how groups deliberate, and then shifting to doing it conversationally, where we get those same principles, but now it's conversational. And so it's just a long road to get to where we are. And so our conversational approach is relatively new as a product. So we've been working on it for a number of years, but we launched it last year. So this product called ThinkScape, and we're rapidly working to continue to advance ThinkScape.
How big is your company?
So we're small. We have about 20 people.
Just incredible. You would imagine that it brings so much value to these companies that use it and these organizations. And where do you see the future of this as this becomes more adapted or accepted? And has there been pushback?
We have not seen pushback, but we do see that there's a lot of concern about AI because of things like hallucinations and things like bias. When you're working with a large company, they have their standard concerns if something uses generative AI. And the cool thing is that, our solution is actually using large language models the way that they were originally intended to use, which is to understand language. And we're not asking it to come up with its own solutions. We're asking it to understand what people are saying and pass information around. And so we definitely avoid the problems that most generative AI systems have. And those problems are getting less and less anyway. Like, these generative AI systems are getting pretty reliable, but it's not like somebody's coming into our system and asking generative AI for medical advice. They're coming into our system, like, we have customers who bring in large groups of doctors into our system to forecast the likely outcome of a clinical trial. Well, in that case, we're building this intelligence. It's medical related, but the knowledge is coming from the people, and the AI is making the system work. And so we avoid the gut reaction worries people have about generative AI, but we don't see pushback about the concept of being able to allow conversations at scale, which is really what we're doing. We're allowing conversations at scale, something that people just had assumed you can't do. And we're saying, well, no, you can do it. Right now, our ThinkScape platform is text-based and voice to text. We have technologies in development that are ultimately going to go to just straight video. So our goal is, a year from now, you could have a Zoom call of 50 people or 100 people, and it all gets woven together this way as well. So it's all very much doable in real-time live video, but we're really refining our technology not at the video level right now.
And so, you spoke on like public policy and like for using it in democracy to make our democratic process better. And I wonder if you could talk about that, and at a large scale, how could it be used in politics and political discourse?
In the world of politics, people care a lot about understanding what the public thinks. And we use a single method for doing that called polling. And polling is a problem in my mind. Polling doesn't show you where groups agree. It actually shows you where they disagree. What I like to say is that polls are polarizing. What a poll does is it shows the population where the disagreement is, and then it reinforces that disagreement by publishing the polls. A swarm is really the opposite. A swarm actually shows you where groups agree. It is actually revealing the direction that the group can go that maximizes their collective conviction. And so if you want to take a large group and find, okay, where can we agree on a policy position? Where can we agree on how to solve a problem? A swarm is the way to do it. And again, this comes from hundreds of millions of years of evolution. A school of fish, if a school of fish would polarize and be unable to come to a decision, it would be dead. Or if a school of fish broke into two schools of fish and went in different directions because they couldn't agree, it would be dead. That's not what happens. A school of fish will converge very quickly on the solution that maximizes their collective agreement. And the same thing happens in bee swarms when they make decisions and bird flocks. And so I definitely think that using these nature-based methods to understand public sentiment, or among groups of policymakers to come to agreement, especially if those policymakers have very strong divisions.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting to see it play out in the U.S. Congress, for example, how that would work. Incredible. So you have a vast career in AR and VR. What's going to be the device that blends that all together? What's the future there?
So the future is actually happening pretty quickly, and it is a merger of AI and augmented reality. And so you've probably seen that Meta has their Ray-Ban glasses that have cameras and has an AI agent in the glasses, and Google is working on the same thing with Samsung and other companies. And this will be, I think all of these large companies really see that the next ultimate replacement of the handheld phone are going to be basically eyewear, and with, it also has earbuds built in, and it has what you call a multimodal large language model built into it. And the thing that makes this transformative is that the AI, when it's on this pair of glasses, can access the camera, so it can see what you see, it can hear what you hear, and it can give you advice and guidance and information based on your context. It's context aware. And so as the world really pushes to make AI agents be assistants, the most natural, useful way to deploy an assistant is in glasses, because that assistant can, again, see what you see, hear what you hear. And so when if you're walking down the street and you see a coworker and you can't remember that coworker's name, the AI will whisper it into your ear. Like that will happen. And there's all kinds of really powerful, interesting things about this. And there's also a whole bunch of really scary things about this. And I write often about both the benefits and the risks of this convergence of augmented reality and artificial intelligence. In fact, this book I have sitting over here, Our Next Reality, which came out last year, is really largely about that. It's about I wrote it with coworker Alvin Graylin, and we really look at, yes, AI is going to transform how we interact in our daily lives, because they're going to basically be with us as we navigate our world. Again, really powerful things and really scary things if there's not some protection.
And we're all going, because of the nature of this, it is kind of like a technological arms race between all these big companies. Everyone's moving in that direction, and it's coming quicker than we think. Our Next Reality, that's the name of your book? I'm going to download that on my Kindle after this and start reading it. The future of jobs is a big topic. And what's your prediction there?
I worry about it. Because AI is getting so good at doing so many things so quickly. Ironically, the place that AI is right now, the most skilled, is at programming. And so the irony is that programmers are replacing their profession. And that's a tough one. There are going to need to be humans in the loop, and there need to be humans who guide the programming process. But because there's so much computer code that these AI systems can be trained on, and because there's such a logical, structured output, these AI systems are just phenomenal at doing it. And so for job security, there's a lot of things that AI will have a much harder time emulating. And they're the things that are more human, right? It's, there's a lot of people say, oh, well, AI will replace human copywriters and human authors. And I'm a lot more skeptical there, because right now the creativity of AI systems is statistical creativity. It's not really a true creativity. An AI system is, can be trained on a lot of material and can create new combinations. And that's interesting, but that's not the same as a human writer or artist or creative who has a true inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I am still hopeful that in the creative disciplines, humans will have an edge for quite some time. Again, the field is changing so quick, or the technology is changing so quickly. It's hard to know where the limit is on the power of these AI systems.
Mm-hmm. Well, Louis, we talked about it a lot. Is there anything that you feel we didn't cover that you'd like to add?
I will say that, we at Unanimous AI, we're always looking for big groups that have interesting things that, interesting problems to solve. And we're always willing to do pilot tests with big groups. If you've got a lot of followers of your podcast and you wanted to harness their intelligence, we could do something interesting. It's always interesting when you take a population and say, oh, let's predict something about the future of jobs. For example, if we took 200 or even 50 people and asked them to forecast the future of, what does the future of work look like, we would get really interesting insights.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's just, I feel like you're just kind of scratching the surface of what, this kind of means for organizations and groups of people and what the outcome can be of that. I'm really excited to read your book. I would love to have you at Imagine AI conference and have you, speak on stage and talk about this stuff. Well, Louis, thank you so much for joining the Imagine AI podcast. Our conference is May 28th to the 30th in Las Vegas. Tickets are available now. Please go on to imagineai.live to find them. And Louis, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me.